All right. Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar today. I'm Kalyan, co-founder and CEO of Alma. Before we start discussing today's topic, I want to quickly run through some logistics of how this will work in case you're new to this. As attendees, all of you are muted by default. So you'll only hear me speaking, but none of the audio from your side will come through. So you don't need to worry about muting or unmuting. Feel free to ask questions anytime during the webinar. You don't have to hold your questions till the end. To ask a question, just simply type it on the chat below. When you do, please do select all panelists and attendees so everybody can see your question. I'll respond to your questions as soon as we're able to during the webinar. And also this slide deck that we'll use, as well as the complete recording of the session, will be sent to each of you. So you can just sit back and listen in. We're also going to have a couple of live polls to help us gather feedback from everyone attending today in terms of where they are with respect to their mentorship program. So I request you to participate and share your thoughts there. That'll help all of the audience that are listening in here. And I'm really glad to see so many of you tuning in live today. Clearly, this is a popular topic. I hope you're all comfortable and ready to dive in. I'll begin by saying this: at Alma, we're always looking for ways to support and grow the alumni relations and advancement profession. I am personally very passionate about doing this because it all started with my own personal experience. My co-founder here at Alma, Sri, and I met in college in India. That's where we're from. While we were still in college, we actually got involved in a situation where a lack of scholarships led to a personal struggle for both of us. And at that point, it was a really simple problem that we needed to solve. And we ended up essentially contacting alumni and raising funds to prevent several students from being forced to drop out. And then we ended up establishing a nonprofit organization to continue this effort. But I think the key lesson from that entire experience for us was that we realized that the relationship between alumni and their alma maters was broken or wasn't at the level that it should be at. And this was not just at our institution, but at most education institutions globally. And that's what actually led to the creation of Alma several years ago now. And our mission is to help educational institutions make their education more accessible and affordable to everyone by driving more participation from alumni. And we've come a long way since then. We're fortunate to be serving hundreds of universities and schools, helping them cultivate meaningful lifelong relationships with their alumni by becoming more alumni-centric. And being alumni-centric to me means thinking about alumni first and understanding their needs and creating programs that serve those needs and meet them where they are at, right? So as an institution, you have to think about how do you provide value to your alumni before seeking value in return. And in that context, today's discussion on how can you engage alumni in a meaningful way while providing the valuable gift of mentorship to your students, especially the class of 2021, is very, very relevant, right? And, in my life, I've actually been fortunate to have some great mentors over the last 10 years. One that I particularly recall was, when I quit my first full-time job to start a new company. Very stupid idea back then. For the next 2 years after I did that, I tried so many things, but absolutely nothing worked. Right? It was terrible, probably the worst phase of my life. And I felt like a complete failure. And just on the verge of, considering quitting my passion for entrepreneurship and going back to my job, I actually met an alum from my alma mater who had built a successful business. And because of that common sort of connection we had with our college, we ended up talking about some of my challenges in a lot of detail. And over the next few years, he took me under his wing, coached me on literally everything, like, how to run a business, how to manage finances, how to stay emotionally stable, how to enjoy this journey. So, as I recall those days, I cannot tell you how valuable that experience was. And, I could say that without a doubt, I couldn't be where I am today without that mentorship. at the right time from the right person, with the right context. And I shared that story because I wanted to underline what we all already know, which is that mentorship has the potential to change people's lives, right? And when we look at where we are today, the job market is certainly steadily growing since the devastation of last year, but it's still not close to what it was before the pandemic. And as our class of 2021 gets towards graduation season, many of our students obviously will start looking towards their alma maters for career guidance and support. And mentorship programs, especially during this time, can be a beacon for them to navigate their life after graduation. They're obviously a great way to, for us as institutions to equip our graduates with the right skills and mindset to kickstart their career. Students can receive so much value from mentorship. They can receive advice on internships, careers, business etiquette, networking, resumes, interviewing tips. So, as long as they're connected with the right people, potentially, already practicing in the same field, a lot of value can be generated for your students. And, alumni can also serve as, sort of sounding boards for students' ideas, or, even answer thoughtful questions. Students can also hone their life skills, right? Like confidence, leadership, networking, teamwork, etc., with the right kind of mentorship. So, I just wanted to, before we dove into some of the conversations around, how can we enable the right kind of mentorship, given your resources and given your goals, I wanted to take a moment to kind of reiterate the importance of mentorship and why it's such an important topic right now. I want to just get a better sense of the audience here. So I would like you to answer a couple of questions for me. The first one is this: what is the status of your alumni mentorship program? To answer this question, okay, this is live. So to answer this question on your phone or on your computer, just go to your browser and type in slido.com and enter 55444 as the code. And you'll see that the question on your screen, this question you'll see on your screen, and you'll be able to answer these questions, right? You can also, like, if you have a phone, you can just scan this code on your camera and you'll be able to go there directly as well. Let me see if I'm getting a few responses. So a few of you have started. Let's see. Well, let's wait for a few more seconds to see if we get a few more responses. I would request all of you to please participate in the poll, because this will help all of us in the audience get a better sense of, who the audience is. So clearly, a lot of you are sort of doing ad hoc sort of one-on-one connections on request, which is still good. Some of you have mentorship programs specifically to help the class of 2021. Some of you don't really have a formal alumni mentorship program. Some of you have a formal program, but nothing specifically for the class of 2021. I've got 25, so only some of you have responded so far. This is interesting. I think this tells us that a lot of you who have joined don't really have like a proper mentorship program in place. About 88% of you don't really have something formal in place. So I think the content that we've put together today in terms of how you could actually get started would certainly be helpful. I'm going to actually move on to one more question here. So stay on that page if you've already answered. I'm going to move to the next question. You'll be able to answer on the same page. If you've not yet opened the page, it's still the same link, slido.com, and then enter the code 55444. What are your key challenges in creating a mentorship program? So a lot of you said you don't have a formal mentorship program in place. What are some of the key challenges that you have, so that I have a better sense of what's, useful for me to cover? Let's give it a few seconds. A lot of you said lack of staff resources, which I definitely expected. And then not sure which format would work for our constituents. That's definitely an important topic as well. Unclear in terms of ROI. That's a great point. Yeah. So clearly a majority of you are basically saying you're either not sure what format would work for your constituents, or you just don't have the resources to be able to execute a full-blown sort of mentorship program, which makes sense. I'm going to switch back. So what I wanted to do, therefore, I realized that, the reason I actually put together this webinar in the first place was a lot of institutions reaching out to us sort of saying, hey, like, we talk about mentorship all the time, but, we just don't have the resources to be able to do something that, larger institutions are able to do. So how can we think about mentorship with lesser resources? What are some formats that we can think about, right? So I've put together, some formats that I think are useful to think about. Generally, when most institutions talk about mentorship, we're typically talking about what we would call the traditional sort of one-on-one mentoring. You pair a mentor and a mentee and allow the conversation to develop, right? But depending on your goals and how many students you want to impact, how many resources you have, how much budget you have, and depending on those parameters, some of these other formats could actually be quite helpful. So what I'll do over the next few minutes is explain each of these formats, right? Go through some examples of real mentorship programs like those, and then conclude with comparing all of the different formats. What I'm hoping this will help us do is it will help each of you consider what's best for your institution, given your resources, in order to help your students and alumni, right? Let's dive in. Let's start with traditional one-on-one mentoring. There are definitely some really good mentoring programs today in the country from educational institutions. And in this traditional model, like I said, a mentor is matched with a mentee. The matching is done deliberately based on certain criteria, such as work experience, skill sets, goals, personality, and a variety of other factors, right? Typically, pairs work together for at least 6 months to have the best impact. The good thing about this format is obviously that the potential impact on a student or an alum who is the mentee is very high. But obviously the downside is that it requires significant amount of effort from staff and mentors, right? Let's look at a few examples. I wanted to highlight some specific things about each of these examples. I picked University of Mary Washington College of Business as an example. Here, they actually have a 1-year sort of pairing, right? So this is a very long-term kind of mentorship pairing. And what was interesting about this is that they require the first contact to be made by the mentor to the mentee, which is different from typical programs where the mentee is expected to start the conversation and drive it from there. So I thought that was an interesting idea, and maybe something that you could try if you were to do like a traditional sort of one-on-one mentoring program. And what I think is also nice about this page is they've got all the information laid out clearly here, along with all of the frequently asked questions, which I'm sure they've gathered from all of the different mentors and the questions that they got. And it's really simple to sort of serve as a mentor. You just fill an application online, and then you'll get a response in terms of whether you're accepted to be a mentor, right? Another interesting program in terms of like the traditional sort of one-on-one mentoring program is University of Minnesota School of Public Health. They actually boast the largest mentor program of any school of public health. They're serving 400 students and mentor pairs, and also have a lot of helpful resources for their mentors. What I thought was really interesting about them was, for example, the mentor guide that they have is actually quite helpful, right? Again, all of these links will be sent to you as part of the recording, so you'll get access to all of these links. So yeah, I think these guys did this university did a really good job of sort of collating the resources for their mentors in terms of do's and don'ts, and how to manage the relationship, and suggesting some topics to get started with, etc., which I think is a good idea because it'll help the mentors get moving. And obviously frequently asked questions again. Another interesting example that I wanted to show you was the NYU College of Arts and Sciences. What I found interesting about their program is that they've actually split this into 3 kinds of mentors that you can actually get. So they have peer mentoring, right, which is essentially sort of pairing students with other students who are in upper classes, right? And they've got, sort of affinity group based mentoring between students. So that's peer mentoring. They've got the more traditional sort of alumni mentoring, but they've also got faculty mentoring, which I thought was interesting. So I think this is another interesting approach. If you could do like a little more of a larger scale mentoring program, you could think about peer mentoring, alumni mentoring, and faculty mentoring. A couple of sort of high school examples as well that I wanted to highlight. Samuel Academy is a charter school in California. What I thought was really interesting about the way they did their program, and they're actually pretty successful with this program, is that they have a single focus for their mentoring program, which is higher education persistence for all of their alumni, right? So the way they've organized the entire mentoring program is based on that one focus. And they've done a really good job of explaining what are the steps needed to participate in this mentorship program. And they've got a ton of good resources again, just like NYU, the example that I showed earlier, really good resources for their mentees and mentors to get started. I thought this was really interesting because of that focus. And another example, actually kind of similar, is again Harmony Public Schools. This is a public school district in Texas. Again, one of our customers here. And what was again interesting about their mentorship program is that this was all one-to-one mentoring, but they have 3 focus areas very, very clearly laid out, which is either college admission or college success, and then career transition, right? Which again, what I really liked about their program is just how focused they are on these 3 specific goals. And I think one key learning, one of the biggest sort of challenges for a lot of institutions in terms of implementing mentoring programs, and some of you mentioned that in the question that I asked as well, is unclear about the ROI, right? So I think, how does the mentoring program play into sort of the larger overall strategic goals from the institution's perspective is something that's really important to think about. And I think these 2 institutions, I picked these examples because I thought they did a really good job of how does this add into the overall institution's strategic goals, right? I also wanted to then sort of, after the sort of the one-to-one mentorship program, I also wanted to talk about job shadowing. Most of us obviously know the idea behind job shadowing, right? It's essentially sort of creating the opportunity for a student to observe an alum at work and learn from that experience, right? Typically, students are paired with alums working in a career that they're most interested in. But it actually, interestingly, it can also be a really good opportunity for students to think about careers that they've never considered, right? The good thing about this format is that with a moderate amount of effort, students can actually get a very high level of exposure into, a potential career. And also the time commitment that's needed from your staff, especially if you don't feel like you don't have the resources to pull off like a traditional one-on-one kind of mentoring program, the time commitment needed from your staff and even alumni themselves is much smaller, right? Like this could just be an alum dedicating a few hours a year, allowing a student to shadow them during work, right? Obviously, this gets challenging with the virtual environment that we're in today. That's why I wanted to actually share this example from Columbia University. They actually introduced this program called virtual job shadowing, right? And I thought they did a really good job in sort of explaining what are the benefits of virtual job shadowing, right? But they also use this interesting tool called Forage. Let me see if I can open this. So maybe this is something that some of your institutions could consider as well. But what this tool does is essentially it showcases the opportunities for students, right? So, virtual work experience programs at top companies, right? And typically like 5 to 6 hours, of training. And then, you have all the relevant resources and skills that are needed to be able to actually shadow and, help the mentor out during that shadowing, right? So this is a good tool. Columbia is using it. And I thought this was interesting to share because they did a really good job when it comes to implementing a virtual job shadowing program. in today's day and age, especially again, like resources being a constraint, this could be a very interesting opportunity for your institution if, if this is a direction you're interested in, right? Another example that I picked, again, picked a high school example here. I loved this picture. This clearly shows the value of job shadowing, where you could potentially be sitting with, in the newsroom, shadowing someone potentially, right? The reason I picked this again is they have this idea called Alumni Job Shadow Day, right? So rather than sort of splitting this across the year, they have a single day where they enroll multiple mentors and mentees for job shadowing, and they make this happen during a given day. So again, it's easier to sort of measure engagement and get everyone sort of participating on a single day. So I thought this was Alumni Job Shadow Day, I think, is an interesting idea, right? Another example around job shadowing that I wanted to share was from, I believe this is Bates College. So they call this the Purposeful Work Job Shadow Program. I like the word purposeful because I think they're trying to make it very intentional in terms of what kind of job shadowing is done. And what was also interesting about this program is that they've actually invited sponsors. So they're also showing the benefit of job shadowing to employers and inviting them to become sponsors to design their own sort of job shadow programs with their agenda, and sort of how many hours can they dedicate for this, and like how do they maybe even offer like a small stipend or something like that. So I think this is again a good program from a job shadowing perspective. What was interesting, like I said, was how they invited employers as sponsors to this program. Again, I think if you go through the details here, you'll get a much better sense of how they sort of organize this. Going back, I want to quickly reiterate, we looked at traditional one-on-one mentoring. We looked at job shadowing. I also want to talk about micro internships. This is a relatively new idea, but this could also be really powerful. Hold on a second. I see a couple of chat. All right. No questions so far. All right, I'm going to keep going. So micro internships are essentially sort of short-term professional assignments, similar to the kind of tasks that could be given to like a new hire or a summer intern, right? For example, content creation, industry research, data cleansing, social media support, etc. So the idea is to get your alumni to submit tasks like these as micro internships, and then assign them to students to work on, right? This gives the students the necessary exposure to like real world situations and parallelly being mentored by the alum themselves towards completing that task and then learning the necessary skills, right? Like this is also obviously beneficial for alumni because they can actually, I mean, again, depending on company policy, etc., outsource a task or outsource some work for someone else to actually get it done while they're also learning. So it's a win-win, right? And similar to sort of the job shadowing format, the good thing about this format is that with a moderate amount of effort, students can actually get really good exposure, and also the time commitment needed from your staff and alumni themselves is not as high as sort of the traditional mentoring. I want to actually show you a couple of examples of micro internships programs. This is Lake Forest College. And what I found really interesting about them is that they've actually renamed this as micro mentorship program. And what they've done is they've said this is approximately 20% mentorship and 80% micro internship experience, right? So they've sort of designed this program to be like 20 to 50 hours, but in a duration of about 2 to 6 weeks, right? And the interesting part for me is that this is actually funded by the college themselves. So if a student actually enrolls in a micro internship program and gets the job done, they actually get paid by the college, right? And they've obviously listed some of the numbers here in terms of how much students get paid. And again, like this is a real benefit for everyone. And I think they did a really good job again on this page to be able to sort of explain why this is beneficial for students, but also why this is beneficial for an organization, right? I won't go into a lot of details of what's on the page, but you get the idea, right? For me, what's interesting is, about figuring out the budgets to potentially fund students to be able to do this, and then, also engage alumni while doing that. I think we've got a question from Dana. Will you be sending us the slideshow recording? Yes, Dana, we will be sending the slideshow and the recording. I'm going to move on with a couple more examples here. Swarthmore College is a similar example. I just picked another institution doing a really good job with micro internships. They also gave it a brand name, called it SWATworks, which I thought was a good name. And again, similar, like students are committing to a 40-hour project with a mentor for which they will be paid a micro grant of $500. Again, this is coming potentially from donations to the college, right? So again, really interesting, and they made it really simple for yourself to register with a simple form and apply for micro internships as well. Another interesting micro internship example is Amherst College. I picked this example to, again, they're doing a lot of the things that I showed with the earlier two examples in a similar way. But what was also interesting with Amherst, and why I think this could be more relatable for you all, is that they're using this tool called Parker Dewey, right? Where it essentially, the tool or the system actually gathers all of these micro internship opportunities for you. So you, as an advancement team or an alumni relations team, don't necessarily need to go out and find micro internship opportunities for your own students. So, if you don't have the resources to do that from your own alumni base, you could potentially use a tool like Parker Dewey to be able to do this, which is what Amherst College is doing here. They've also got some sort of example projects here to sort of help students understand what kind of projects they'd be working on. So this, I thought, again, was a good example. Let me see if there are any questions so far. Nothing so far, so I'm going to keep moving. Another, sort of interesting idea for mentorship are academic incubators. Obviously, these require more investment. This is not really simple to pull off, but these have the potential to transform lives, or at least ideas, right? Academic incubators typically provide a community, resources, and typically even physical environments that are essential to fostering entrepreneurial exploration from your students, right? Mentors, again, could typically be alumni who are entrepreneurs or investors. And the idea is to encourage students to develop their ideas into full-blown startups, right? This is definitely not for every institution, because it does require significant investment in terms of staff resources, but the outcomes can be completely life-changing for those students. Realizing that a lot of you said you don't have enough staff resources for a mentorship program, I won't go into a lot of details here, but I'll quickly show you some of the examples that we've put together here, which I thought was really good from an academic incubator perspective. A simple idea here, again, Swarthmore College, they did this interesting thing called SWAT Tank, obviously inspired by Shark Tank, which is a simple sort of idea pitching competition from students. So students work on ideas and then they pitch it to a group of alumni who are mentors, and then they get, funds for that as part of the pitching program. So that's actually a pretty simple idea again. And then there are much more sort of full-blown entrepreneurship incubators, and even, American University here is a good example, but Northeastern, for example, is a full-blown sort of venture accelerator. So this is obviously taking it to the next level. Again, I won't go into a lot of details because I feel maybe this is not the most relevant idea for this group. So I'm going to keep moving. Career guidance panels, on the other hand, are actually much more simpler to organize. Typically, these are not, you wouldn't think of these as mentorship, but broadly speaking, the idea here, as most of you know, is to bring alumni back and organize panel discussions about each career path, right? And I think the benefit obviously is that this allows students to learn about various careers and identify which careers could potentially, be most interesting for them. And obviously, these are not one-on-one, and the expectation isn't that they'll have as much impact on a student as, let's say, traditional one-on-one mentoring does, but these are much lower effort to organize, and they still provide students valuable mentorship, right? I'll quickly go through a couple of examples again here. One is University of Washington. What I liked about their sort of alumni career panels was that they specifically focused on three themes, which is careers with impact, identity in the workplace, innovation and action, right? I think these are really good themes. And they've got specific panel discussions with each of these themes happening each quarter, which I thought was a really structured way of doing, career panels with alumni. I also wanted to quickly show you this example from University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. What they did, which was really interesting, was that they've organized all of these career panels by industry, which again makes it really easy for students to sort of say, okay, this is what I want to watch, this is what I want to learn, and then choose and pick which panels they attend. So doing it by industry, I thought was a good, simple idea to work with as well. So what I wanted to do here is, we've spoken about these 5 formats, right? Traditional one-on-one mentorship, job shadowing, micro internships, academic incubators, and career panels. We sort of put down, based on staff effort, the time investment needed by a student, the number of students that you can benefit from a program like this quickly, and potential impact on each student, so that now, based on your resources, based on your goal, you could pick what's a good place to start, right? Like if you're really low on resources, maybe a good place to start is just career panel discussions, right? You could definitely pull that off much more easily than, let's say, something as complex as like the one-on-one kind of mentoring, right? But I think that job shadowing and micro internships, especially micro internships, is a very interesting option to look at. That's a great way for you to get started in terms of supporting your students, especially the class of 2021, with the right career mentoring. I've got a question here. Let me just take a look at it. Will you share the recording of the session? Yes, we will share a recording of the session. I'll close that. Let me see if there are more questions here. Nothing apart from that. What I wanted to, and I hope that this is helpful for each of you as you consider, what format of mentorship program is the most helpful for you. I also wanted to take a few minutes towards the end here to go through how Alma-Base, as a software, Alma-Base is a tool, can help you with these different kinds of mentorship programs, right? If you're thinking about the more, this is just a demonstration website, by the way, built on Alma-Base. And if you want to build a traditional sort of one-on-one mentoring program with Alma-Base, you can do a couple of different things. One, you can build an online alumni directory like this for all of your alumni. This will allow your students or even other alumni to be able to find alumni by specific industry, by specific location, by specific class, so they can filter down and find specific people and be able to connect with them, right? Like I'm just going to go to an example of an alum's profile. This is what an alum's profile would look like. And then I'm able to see, what their interests are, what their skills are, and then be able to connect with them on the online alumni directory, which is a really, again, like low touch in terms of effort from your institution or your staff. Once you set this up, a lot of this can happen in a self-served manner where you don't have to be the middleman in making these connections. You can allow alumni to connect with each other by themselves, right? The same directory could also be, presented as a map. This is a great way. I mean, obviously right now most of us are not traveling, but when travel is back, like this is a great way for students to be able to go in here and say, hey, like I'm traveling to Baltimore. Can I connect with some alumni and, seek guidance? This is a great way for them to do that, again, in a self-served way. We also support a little more of a traditional, again, like one-on-one mentoring program where you can set up the program with different topic areas, right? And you can go in here and try to, essentially as a student or as an alum, you're able to go in here and find mentors, again, by specific topic areas. Like, let's say I'm interested in job shadowing, right? I could essentially find a list of alumni who are self-opted in to provide job shadowing, right? This is a great way for me to then connect with them, send them a request, and if they accept my request, then we're able to start having a conversation within the platform, right? So this is like a full sort of mentorship in a box kind of system here, where you can do everything from listing yourself as a mentor, connecting to a mentor, having a conversation. And obviously, once the connection is made, they can go on and have a conversation wherever they see most appropriate. And then you, as an institution, as an advancement team, get all the reporting on, who's connected to who, how many conversations have they had, and all of that reporting really helps in getting a sense of how this is working, right? We've looked at how to sort of do like a traditional mentorship program with Alma Base. Let me just take a pause here. I think there's something here. Okay, sorry, mistaken. But let's say you want to do something a little more like a job shadowing or a micro internship. Really, all that you need to be able to like organize a job shadowing program or a micro internship program is you need to collect the right information. You need to from anybody that's interested. So that's enrolling interest, right? And then you need to be able to communicate this well with your alumni. So, the tools that we have in place to be able to do this is, one, you can create a page, right? I'm just picking an example here of an alumni business directory, which, is obviously, I'm not talking about the business directory here, but just as an example, you're able to create a page like this. You're able to list all of the information that's relevant. So, for example, if we go back to one of these examples, this is, University of Minnesota School of Public Health, listing all of the information, with FAQs and things like that. So with Alma Base, you don't need to depend on your IT team or web staff to be able to create a page and then put in all the information. You're able to do that. You're able to create a form and then sort of, you can, I just took an example of a form, something like this. It could be as simple as this, right? Like just name, contact information, write a brief statement about the type of experiences you're interested in making available, right? And then this example from Tennessee State, again, a customer, this goes into a little more detail, briefly describe your current position, reasons you want to be a mentor, what information would you like to use to help us match you with a mentor or a mentee, things like that, right? With this, what you're able to do is, let's say you want to organize a job shadowing program, then obviously you've got to gather the right kind of alumni and the right kind of students who want to get paired and, collect enough information to be able to make the pair happen. And all you need for something like that is forms. And we, with Alma Base, you essentially get the ability to create your own forms within the system. And unlike using something like a Google Forms or, any other kind of external form system, the advantage here is that all of the engagement that happens with these forms is then tracked. And then you're able to report on that engagement, because if an alum comes in here, views the form or signs up on the form, that is definitely engagement that you should count, probably more than, let's say, someone showing up at one virtual event, for example, right? So, again, that's the advantage of using this form within the system as opposed to using an external form like a Google form, right? Similarly, even if you wanted to do like a micro internships program, you could create a sponsors page. You could create a form for sponsors to contact you and list their sort of micro internships. You could get alumni to do that. Similar in terms of the tools or the softwares that you would need to be able to execute a program like this. And career panels, of course, is more of sort of, once you gather the information, you obviously need to organize the panel. And especially in the virtual world, that's probably going to look more like a Zoom webinar like this one. And we've got the necessary tools for you to be able to collect registration. So this is just an example. You're able to allow your alumni to register, your students to register if they want to, be part of listening to the speakers in that panel discussion. And you're able to then track all of the information. You're able to measure the engagement. And all of this is also backed by a very sort of robust communication system. So you're able to email all of your alumni, all of your students, or sub-segments of those populations to be able to communicate and market each of these opportunities to the right constituents, right? So those are some of the different tools that we have in place to be able to support your mentorship program. And I want to sort of end with showing you what I've been talking about as measurement of your, or rather measurement of all of these different engagement touch points, right? So on the back end with Alma Base, what you're able to do is you're able to track each of these activities, right? Someone viewing your mentor directory, right? Or someone visiting your event page, or someone obviously registering for an event, or someone applying to be a mentor. All of these are touch points that you can then categorize, right? And measure on and then report on in terms of, let me just see if I can extend the time frame here in terms of different categories, right? You can sort of say someone who's participated as a mentor, right, is a slightly different level of engagement versus someone who's, let's say, attended one event is maybe like what you would categorize as experiential engagement. Or, you know, if someone's actually become a mentor and provided an year of mentorship, maybe you would categorize that differently. And all of this you can really easily report instead of working with hundreds of different spreadsheets, which is the advantage with sort of doing it in a central system. So I'll sort of pause there. There is a question here from Jackie. Can mentors select mentees through Alma Base? So Jackie, the answer to that is mentors have the ability to accept or reject an invite from a mentee, but in the current mentorship system that we have, the mentee is expected to send a request to a mentor, and mentors have the choice to either accept or reject. But mentors can obviously still go into the traditional sort of alumni directory that we have online, and they're able to contact students potentially and say, hey, like, would you like to get mentored by me potentially? So the answer, I guess, is a half yes in that case. Randy asks, can you show where that engagement report goes live again? Randy, this is something that I will certainly let your customer success manager know. And if they haven't yet enabled this for you, I'll get them to enable this for you. But essentially on the admin panel, on the navigation here, you'll see this option called engagement report. That's where this lives. Hopefully I've answered your question. Let me see if there are more questions. Again, if you want any more information, if you're obviously an existing customer of Alma Base, feel free to reach out to your customer success manager or just help@almabase.com. But if you're not an existing customer and you're just interested in chatting about how you want to implement your mentorship program or how you could potentially use Alma Base for, for your goal, feel free to reach out to us. I have my contact information here, which I will send as part of the recording and the slides, but my email ID is kalyan@almabase.com. So feel free to write to me or visit our website, almabase.com, and leave your information if you need more information from our side. I think that's all I have for today. Interestingly, it's right on the dot with 45 minutes. I'll hang out here for a few more minutes to see if there are more questions, but for those of you that joined, thank you again for spending time with us, and feel free to reach out if you have questions. Thanks. It looks like there are no more questions. So I'll let you all get on with it. Thank you so much. Yeah, Randy, to your question, yes, we will get in touch with you. I'm actually making a note of this, and we will make sure that we reach out to you regarding this. All right. Thank you, everyone, again, for joining us. Have a good rest of the day.